I don't want to interrupt those wise sayings. I welcome each and every one of you to Vacaville Unity Church in the Valley that now uses the name Unity of the Valley Spiritual Center. I welcome you personally. I am Reverend Dahlia Adams, the senior minister at the Spiritual Center. And I welcome you on behalf of Reverend Vic Jenkins, the heart and the soul of this community as it grew from very humble beginnings, as it grew through multiple locations and many challenges. What I hear is that when Vic came to this church, it was a small community and it would meet places like bus depots and funeral homes, and its volunteers and loving community members would practice their choir songs with a deceased body, a casket in the room. Or sometimes in other locations, they would have to pause as the sounds of toilet flushing faded away. In many of these locations where our beloved Reverend Vic led this community, there were situations in which they had to set up and break down every time they had a service. At Unity and in many other Christian churches, it's called church in a box. And it doesn't sound like much until you've tried to do it week after week after week. Imagine coming here today and having to participate maybe in setting up your own chairs, and then putting them away. I'm only bringing this up because this is a most amazing community. I have affirmation on that right there. And Vic, Reverend Vic, I keep calling him that because that's the context in which I knew him. Reverend Vic was very much at the heart of the growth, the spiritual strength, the love, and the sense of family this community had and grew through. So I welcome you to this place, the place that Reverend Vic made possible. I welcome you to a community that is all heart, all love, and deeply grounded in unity teachings. And to all of that, we say thank you to Reverend Vic Jenkins. My own story is that I came here almost 9 years ago. I had worked before that at Unity's prayer ministry, Silent Unity. I had been a guest speaker at many churches, but this was my first church. We can do a call and response here. That young voice is so beautiful to hear in these rooms. Anyway, I came here, short version is having no idea what I was doing, and Reverend Vic was there. And at first, it was one of the scariest things that I had ever experienced, because when I came, I heard story after story after story about how wonderful he was, how wise he was, how inspiring he was, how perfect he was. And here I am, this brand new minister, and he would sit right about where Greg Loebs is sitting. Would you raise your hand? Yeah, okay, so right there. And I'm getting up in front of the congregation, and I'm new at this, and I'm trying to be good at it. And there sits God. Did you ever try to give a talk in front of God? But it went from scary to loving and supportive very, very quickly. Vic very quickly came to me and said, whatever I can do to help and support you, let me know. And he did. And very soon after that, a week or two, we met at Starbucks. I was still nervous. I didn't know his heart, his love, his generosity yet. I was still envisioning going to have coffee with God, literally, you know. And I came to the office again. All of this is new to me, and my dog would come with me. I have this thing about whenever I can, I bring my dog along. And at that time, he was about a 50-pound white Wheaten Terrier, the calmest, gentlest dog you ever met. And so I left him in the office, and I set the alarm, believing the alarm was set off when someone tried to enter the door when they shouldn't. Little did I know that it was a motion detector that set off the alarm. I left the church to go meet Vic at Starbucks. I turned off my phone because the last thing I wanted was my phone to go off as I was meeting with God, right? Well, my dog moved and set off the alarm, and there was nobody there to call the alarm company to say everything was okay. John Minkler, a beloved member of this community who is in charge of the facilities, showed up. I hadn't met him yet. So 2 hours later, I came back, and I need not go into what that was like. But that first meeting with Vic was so wonderful. And after that, we would meet regularly. He would share his wisdom, his love, his experience, his ideas. And he helped me find my own wings. He helped me get to know this community. And not just Vic, there were times when Carolyn was part of that, and she would invite me up and we would have dinner or lunch or just coffee. I don't know if I would have made it those first couple of years without Vic. And I'm sure there are many people here who were part of this community that also feel the strength, the inspiration, the guidance, the love that moved all of us that are part of this community now forward. Forward in truth, in love, in a deep and powerful connection, and grounded in the most amazing way in the truth that unity teaches. So once again, it is my honor to welcome you to this spiritual community, the spiritual community that Reverend Vic built.
We already know that little Lily is going to be a performer. She is not shy. She can hold her own. She was born on Vic's birthday, January 13, 2021. And he was so proud of her. So we wanted her to light the candle, and she's been practicing. She may just steal the show. Maybe she already did. This is Jay's granddaughter. Lily's parents, Jared and Annie, and she did it perfectly. Perfect. And we're off.
This next song was one of Dad's favorite songs of ours, and on one of his favorite flutes he liked to hear. It's called Reunion. So while Janae and I play, we invite you to connect to the spirit of Dad and just listen, be still, maybe remember him. And I'm sure if I know Dad, he's wanting to show you how much he loves you and how much gratitude he has for you as a friend, as a teacher, as a brother, as a reverend.
I'm going to do a meditative prayer, but before I start that, I want you to know that when Vic and I first came here in 1987, I wanted nothing to do with a microphone. I told him, I don't want to do that, Vic, and he said, okay, just give it a try, and we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if you can be comfortable. You can write out what you want to say. And I did that for the first year or two of a meditation. I would do such careful research, and I would write it all out. And then I would stand up here, and everyone had their eyes closed, and they didn't know I was reading it. And then gradually I found myself straying from the words and doing exactly as Vic had been teaching me, which was just to let Spirit speak through you. And I never thought I would be able to do that. But over time, it was just so easy and such a beautiful experience, just opening myself to that. So I just wanted you to give you that little bit of background, because I'm only able to do this because of Vic. He was my teacher too. He was my mentor. So let's take a deep breath together. Inhaling all the love in this room and exhaling any distraction or preoccupation, anything that takes us away from being right here, right now, in this moment. And just feel the energy of this room. We have come together in love, because we have all been brought together by Vic Jenkins, who taught us that the journey is simply the path of the heart. The path of the heart means we open ourselves to learning, to loving, to being who we most truly are, trusting ourselves, forgiving ourselves, holding out a hand rather than pointing fingers. Our teacher, minister, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, brother, husband. And he had such love, has such love still, I'm sure, for each one of us here, for all of humanity, for this congregation of people who supported him so beautifully through his 20 years of ministry. It's a beautiful legacy, and we live it now. So I invite you to bring into your mind some quality of Vic's that you especially admired, something that resonated with you. Just hold that close at heart. And know that all of us here join together in affirming that whatever this quality is, or qualities that resonate with you, are strengthened, are quickened in this moment. We pray together. knowing that God is blessing us now and evermore. Vic will always be with us, loving us, guiding us, and in silence now. I thank Vic in my own personal way, in silence. And as we listen to the words and the music throughout this service, we know that it is all done in love. It is all done in a consciousness of serving. And it is all done in a testament to the life of our beloved Vic. So thank you, God, for giving us this man. He's ours, and we are his. I affirm these truths in the name and through the power of the living, loving Christ in each one of us. Amen.
We're going to be hearing a lot of stories today about Vic. And this song is my way of sharing my story. I'm Laura Sandage, and I worked with Vic here at this church just at the end of his tenure here. And I also experienced him over the years since then as a friend and colleague. And I put what I know of him into this song, and I put how I see him now, what I think he's up to these days. Holy mischief, sacred fire in your eyes, a soulful presence, so much bigger than your size, a sense of purpose, standing strong amid the trials, teaching all of us until your last goodbyes. Holy mischief, sacred fire in your eyes, a playful twinkle. You could laugh and you could cry, an open wonder, walking humble, speaking wise, loving all of us until your last goodbyes. And oh, your family was everyone, and oh, your ministry was never done, and oh, how you'll be missed in your humanity and sought out in eternity by angel folks who crave bad jokes and wicked grins that let them into your holy mischief, fire in your eyes, a limber vision. Hold on tight and improvise a heartfelt yearning, digging deeper, asking why, leading all of us until your last goodbyes. And oh, your heart reached out to everyone, and oh, your spirit's task was never done, and oh, how you'll be missed in your humanity and sought out in eternity by those of us with teary eyes still listening for your replies. Your absence here a cruel surprise. We're wishing we could hear one more reprise of your holy mischief, that sacred fire in your eyes. We feel you holding us within your last goodbyes.
Thank you, Laura, for that amazing song. I know Dad is digging it. So, good afternoon. Yo, 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 it's not the unity I know. Good afternoon. So here's the deal, folks. I'm in a tough spot. And in a second, I'm going to ask you for a huge favor. You're going to have to reach back into your memories for a minute. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background. I first met my father, Vic Jenkins, when I was 4 years old. This is my 4th birthday party. And in every respect, but biology, he was my father. Tough spot. And the only thing I liked better than hanging out with my father was hanging out with my father and my sister Robin, God rest her soul, and my brother Renee. And the crazy thing about that gathering was that we were all a little bit competitive. And it was not the kind of competition you might think of, because we all tried to compete to see who could be the silliest, who could be the most absurd, and you may not believe this, but who could be the most disgusting. And the competition ultimately was who could be the mayor of Clownsville, right? That's what it was all about. It's crazy stuff. So here's a favor I'm asking you, okay? If you know the punchline to this joke, I want you to say it loud and proud. Why did the chicken cross the playground? To get to the other slide. To get to the other slide. You don't. That is right out of my father's playbook. Come on, guys. Literally, that is one of the corny and cute jokes. Dad was great at those. He was really incredible. So here's the deal. For my 11th birthday, my dad and mom took me to my first Major League Baseball game. It was the summer of '69, as the song goes, and it was Bat Day at the Oakland Coliseum. The A's Rick Monday, the player whose name was on my bat, hit a grand slam home run to win the game for the home team. And to an 11-year-old, it was a miracle. And I shared my love for baseball with my father for over 50 years. The line I think that caught me the most in Laura's song was teaching us until your last goodbyes. Could not be more true when talking about Dad. In his book, Breaking the Wine Glass, Dad talks about some of the great teachers, Buddha, Lao Tzu, and Jesus Christ, those willing to explore the realm beyond appearances. Beyond appearances. Right? Those who never hesitated to question easy, often dismissive answers to questions about our relationship to spirit. Dad referred to those great teachers as glass blowers in his book because they always fell towards the breath of spirit and were willing to burst open the containers of conventional wisdom. That was Dad. He was a rebel. Dad was a guy who was ready to help us understand better that not only were we inherently entitled to a relationship with God, but in fact, we are of spirit. We are part of the breath of spirit, the essence, as he said, of the core of life. That was my father. Light and love were among the most consistent themes Dad and I talked about. We talked about bringing light and love to life circumstances often. In the last months, we talked about bringing light and love in the context of the shadow self. That part of you that has regret or is remorseful about what could or should have been, but for a choice that you made. And Dad's bottom line in those conversations was always, don't hide from the shadow self. Don't ignore the shadow self. And certainly don't hate the shadow self, because it is part of you. It is a conglomeration of lessons to be learned, sometimes painful and almost always difficult. So bring light and love to it. There's a story in his book. A friend is looking for his lost car keys. And he's looking around, and a buddy of his comes up to him and says, "What are you looking for, man? What are you up to?" He says, "I'm looking for my car keys. I think I left them over there somewhere." He says, "Well, why are you looking here?" He says, "Because this is where the light is." Kind of missing the concept of bringing light to the problem, right? And here's the deal, whether it's something lost, or a concern, or a fear, or that which you perceive as sin, that's where you bring light and love. That's what Dad taught me. It's a hard lesson, and I continue to learn it. And I will forever miss my father's counsel. Over the last several months of his life, I experienced the manifestation of Dad's teaching about light and love from you all. I saw all the cards that came to the house. I overheard my bonus mom, Carolyn's, side of conversations when you called to check in to see what might be needed. And I enjoyed the food you prepared and dropped off at the house. In the final 48 hours alone of his life, I also witnessed or heard about the manifestation of Dad's teaching about light and love by the smart, good-looking, and musically gifted son, Renee, as well as Dad's equally blessed grandchildren who stepped into the darkest of moments to bring him light and love. Like the time when bonus mom Carolyn and Karen, my sister from another mother, were walking Dad to bed, and he fell. And in that moment, I was not around at the time, but in that moment, Jared, the middle grandson, showed up. He arrived with he arrived with Annie and Lillian to say his last goodbyes to his grandfather. And seeing what had happened, Jared leaned into his grandfather and said, "This may hurt a little bit, Granddad, but I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to carry you to bed." And that's what he did, bringing light and love and a strong back to help Dad. Later that evening, the youngest grandson, Xander, and his fiancée, Arby, stopped by to say their goodbyes. Xander went with Carolyn to the bedroom to see his grandfather a final time when another unexpected emergency occurred. Z, as he's affectionately known, did what was his to do, bringing light and love to Dad, but also a clear and calm demeanor to help Carolyn get things back on track. The day after Dad passed away, Lauren, the oldest granddaughter, and Renee brought candles, incense, and surrounded Dad with pictures of family. They blessed him on his journey. Then they followed the gurney with Dad's body to the hearse parked in the driveway to take him away for a final time from the home he and bonus mom Carolyn built together. Lauren, in that moment, realized Dad's dog Marty was not with them. Empathetic to the loss that Marty was also experiencing, and knowing what her grandfather would want, she stepped into that moment, found Marty, scooped him up, and brought him to the procession that followed Dad. Witnessing the final chapter of their grandfather's life on earth, and able to look past their own grief, each of them did what they were called to do. Each of you, brought light and love to Dad to make the situation as okay as it could possibly be. Lesson about light and love learned, Dad. Thank you very much. The day before Dad took his last breath, Carolyn and I were sitting next to him as he lay in bed, not in pain, but clearly uncomfortable. Carolyn asked if there was anything she could do to make him more comfortable. He said, "No, Carolyn, but let's get on with it. Let's get on with it." Dad always wanted to make sure folks understood his intention, repeated himself. "Let's get on with it, Carolyn." Dad loved baseball, but he was never a pitcher. But man, that was one of the finest curveballs I ever witnessed in my life. And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. Carolyn didn't know what to say in that moment. We looked at each other, and he said it again. "Let's get on with it." I finally leaned to him and said, "Hey, Dad, we're not holding you back. It makes us very sad to say goodbye, but we understand if it's your time." It would be another 24 hours before he would cross that thin veil that separates this life from what lies beyond. The fact is, Dad knew the score, and he was acknowledging in that moment there would be no Rick Monday-like miracle to win one for our team, and he was ready. I should clarify, his mind and his spirit were ready. But man, the human body, what an incredibly resilient and stubborn creation. Folks, today is a day to mourn, but it is also a day to celebrate. Is it a day to cry, and it is a day to laugh? Is it a day to share stories about Dad and take a moment to reflect on your memories of him, your experiences with him, the glass blower, the one willing to push back against conventional thinking and help us see that not only were we in relationship with Spirit, no questions asked, but we are of Spirit. We are of Spirit. Today is a day to bask in shared light and love, and it is welcomed. And afterward, and this is Dad channeling through me right now, when the day is concluded, as he would insist, as our teacher would insist, let's get on with it. Let's get on with life. Oh, yeah.
At an early age, I became aware
My dad was a bit different. He was special. He had a way of disarming people, carrying a gentle disposition that put others at ease. He could speak, traversing many worlds from the heavenly high, right down to that earthy, gritty, real stuff. Yeah. Yeah. What Jay said. And all the while, speaking from his heart. He could make controversial topics lighter and easier to digest, then in the next moment have everyone laughing again. And though he wasn't perfect, he always tried to take the higher road and always learning and growing as a result, which I think is how he developed just great spiritual strength and wisdom. I realize now more than ever how unique he was as a man. Man, look, I mean, there are so many more things I could say about Dad and his evolution from being a fine musician and a teacher of American history and pit orchestra at Montgomery High School, then becoming a Unity minister, and how he helped me establish my own place and career as a sound healer, musician, and presenter, or how he became the leading director of SAGE, that's the Solano Alliance for Justice and Empowerment. I mean, really, it was the death and murder of my sister, his daughter, Robin, our sister. And its horrible story, it's horrific story, really. Tragedy associated with our family. It kind of put our family on the front lines of the domestic violence thing. Stay on the phone. That was Dad's mantra, which was Robin's final words that she said to him while they were on the phone. And it was there where Dad kind of stepped out of retirement and took his next steps more deeply into public service. I was really impressed at how Dad actually consciously used our family tragedy to instill the compassion and understanding for change to happen, for great change to happen. And he developed his skill set in such a way where he was listening to his guidance, just like he always did, showing up and saying what is, and his groundedness, his presence. I really admire that about Dad. He was self-disciplined and had a sharp, intelligent mind with clear vision and dedication to what was morally right, fair, and just. But you know all this pretty much, yeah. But one story I'd like to share that's a little different about the high school days. I don't know if anyone's here from Montgomery High School, but, oh, hey, right, yeah, okay. While Dad taught history and the small orchestra, fellow students would often come up to me and say, "I love your dad. Mr. Jenkins is totally cool."
And, you know, it must have been great growing up with a dad like him. Is that funny? It really was. And yes, I am proud and grateful to have had a father like him. One thing I hear most recounted as making a huge impression from students was the quiet minute. At the beginning of the class, when the bell rang, we were all instructed to have a quiet minute. It's probably for Dad's sanity as well. But for kids, high school kids, you know, you could do whatever you wanted in that minute. You could journal, you could read, close your eyes, or just be. As long as you kept to yourself and didn't disrupt others in their space, right? So, of course, there were gigglers and snickerers and shenanigans and things like that that would go on. It wasn't too long before everyone just got into it, would protect, hey, it's the quiet minute, you know. And, I mean, it was an opportunity to unplug and receive an oasis of peace for a change in an otherwise frenetic school day. That 1 minute a day made a lifelong impression for many. It's so simple and impactful. So in my heart of hearts, I know Dad is right here, fully receiving this moment, receiving you. And I believe in his own way, he would like you to receive his love for you. Yeah. So Dad had a special way of bringing people together. And thank you for carrying that forward in your lives. Yeah. Okay, one last thing. We shared so much in common. Our love of amazing women. My bonus mom, well, my mom, Gloria, for one, we have to have her in there. And of course, our bonus mom, Carolyn. And it was really just being with them. When I'd come over, they'd be laughing and having a great time, and you could just see they were simpatico, you know? And it was healing. And it was an eye-opener for me to say, hey, relationship can actually work. You know, it was a revelation. And I think in seeing that and being around that, their energy, their playfulness, opened my heart into possibilities. And boom, there comes Janae. So the loyalty, the devotion, your intelligence, your beauty, you're really the two most amazing beings I know. And the thing is, this family isn't short of amazing women. You know, Aunt Ginger, Aunt Sue. I can name you all, right? So thank you and bless you. I'm going to let someone else speak now.
I can already
pretty emotional, and now I need to kiss you. Thank you for all the things that you've shared. This has been a beautiful day, and I tend to verboseness, as my family has told me, so I don't want to take more time than is allotted, but I've told them I do not like this. Okay, so you can kind of, choose your way. I have thought, so many of you know Vic from the time that you've had with him, and I'm just going to tell you a little about him as a boy growing up and where he grew up and what it was like. And actually, to me, I see that my parents succeeded very well. That describing what Jay and Renee said about Vic is how my dad was to me. And love travels, doesn't it? And it's so good to hear all of these things. So many of them I hadn't heard before. Because, your families, as you start your own home and move on to your own group of people that you so dearly love, you don't get to see all the time the kids growing up. I'm grateful for the times Jay and Robin and Renee came down and stayed in Dinuba, which is where we live, and we got to see them grow up. I remember Jay at 4 years old, the first time they arrived at our house for Christmas. This is at my parents' house. And he wore his Santa Claus suit, and he performed beautifully, just like another little one over here. I think we must have a family of actors or something. But Vic was always just fun. Sue and I were the oldest and drove him kind of over the brink sometimes. Too much mothering, too much, bossing around and all that. But we loved to spy on him. He was so much fun. He had plots and plans going all the time. He had this little, it was cowboy time in Oklahoma. And I realized so much thinking about this, what changes in our lives, in the background, what's going on, how much freedom kids are allowed to have, and how little they have sometimes when somebody's watching. Oh, don't go and don't get in trouble and don't have any problems. We lived out in the country on a little farm lot that we were just renting, but I think it was 40 acres. And it had, in Oklahoma, there's not a whole lot of rain at the right time of year, and no one seemed to govern well enough to know how to put it, save the water for the right time. And there were ditches and gullies that to kids looked like Grand Canyon. And we could wander all over that area. We had exploring trips and took notes and saved bones and stones and things like that. And it was just a great place to grow up. But Vic especially was enamored of just getting out and going by himself, especially if he could get away from his sisters. So and we loved him dearly. We didn't mean to make his life so miserable. But, and you're a boy and you want to be out on your own and having that someone always there. He loved getting out before we knew where he was and wandering all over those 40 acres. And he could do that. It was safe. We didn't worry about things in those days. And I thought how sad it is to me. We gain some and we lose some. But he had a yearning to travel, to just go places, to see things and do things. And it started when he was a little boy. And he'd wander off and go down to the pasture and talk to the cows, I guess. I don't know what all he was doing, but he often wandered over across the edge of our property. There were some woods there and a creek that ran along there. And no one worried about anybody drowning or anything, and it wasn't that deep. But he just had all kinds of things he played and did there. And there was our church was right across the creek and these woods. It was a little, you know, the little church, little white church in the wildwood. Is that it? The old song? That was what it looked like. It was just a little church. It was the Methodist church. And we went every Sunday, so he was there, knew all the people, but we didn't have anyone there when he would go and travel over to this church. But that was kind of his home spot he ended up at. And I've often wondered what he did there that made him be, you know, such a spiritual person himself. But I think he got that in that area, the way he grew up. And my parents were both teachers, and my dad was a really good teacher who had people who thought he was absolutely wonderful too. And so he came from a line of that type of home base. And we were, Mother and Daddy were both new Christians, maybe a few years by the time we got to this little spot where Vic was really growing up. And they took their religion, if you want to say that, your spiritual self, personally. And they talked about it. We talked at the table all the time. And I think that's a good thing, too, is to be hearing what the rest of your family is thinking. And we always did that. But he would hear what they were thinking about and go down and he just kind of thought about things. And I would love to have those written down in a book, what he was thinking. And Sue and I thought we figured it all out, but he didn't. I'm sure we didn't. He might have been praying for us to hush. I don't know. But at any rate, he was just a good kid, and not until he was 3 years old did he really talk. And I heard my mom say to my dad one day, I think we should take him to Oklahoma City to have someone check. I know he's okay, but he just doesn't say anything. I wonder why. No one, he didn't have any need to at all. But when he was 3, he just started talking in sentences about everything that he'd been thinking. And it was just the whole thing. He waited till he had it perfect, I guess, and started in, and he didn't quit often after that. So it was just fun to watch him grow. And he was in the cowboy age. I think it was Tom Mix was the cowboy of the time. And he had a little pony that Vic got for Christmas. And the pony was Tony. That was it. And it had wheels. And man, he could take that thing and wheel it around, taking it on trips and make up his stories and his games. And of course, Sue and I spied on him, all the time to see what was up. But it was just a really fun way to grow, and he got to do it without feeling too hampered. And I've often wondered what he did at the church when he was there and what he talked to God about. But it was his place to go, kind of a sanctuary, to that churchyard, and where there would be no one but him. And what a great way that was for him to start, and then to have a family that liked to talk and be at the table and listen to each other. He put it all into perspective for himself, I think. And I grew to really love him as he grew older. too. It was, sometimes my husband wasn't so in love with him. He thought he was a little bit of that. He had a nickname in that baseball league you guys had called the Vulture. And that kind of came out in that baseball league just a little bit, and he won quite often too. So it was just a fun time that we had growing up poor in Oklahoma. And it was a different time, a different place, but God was always the same. That didn't change no matter where we moved. And I'm just so grateful that I got to know him even better as adults, as we were adults, and to know his children. I loved them, all of them. And then Vic and Carolyn started that first family fiesta that we had at, all the family came, and all the families came and gathered. And that way we got to know the rest of the kids that arrived along the way, and to know and to love them and to see them grow. And I would suggest that for all of you families who have a chance to do that. It's just a wonderful experience. And that's all I'm really going to tell, just so that you know where he came from. Good parents and lots of love. Lots of punishments, too, I do have to admit. There were those. But that was kind of the times, too. I think that our parenting styles change sometimes a little. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not so much. But at any rate, you can ask my kids about that. I don't know what they think about theirs, but I'm pretty sure they think it's okay, right? Anyway, I just am so glad I got to share this and got to hear all the other family sharing, and appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Shanna was going to speak next, but her son got exposed, and she was going to be flying from Houston, and she just thought it would be safer. She's an RN, and the hospitals there are overrun. So Shanna, you're with us in spirit. Thank you for your willingness to speak. She and Vic had a very special relationship. So next will be my sister, Barbara. I'm one of Carolyn's 5 siblings. And when we met Vic, I can't tell you how thrilled we all were, and still are, that they have been partners, lovers, friends, supporters, teachers, both of them. While to many of us, Vic was about as good as you can get. He knew he wasn't perfect, and he was the first to admit it. He had deep regrets, and he worked long and hard to forgive himself, and he worked long and hard to forgive others. And I think that was the wholeness of his humanity that made it so truthful for him to accept each of us. He knew all parts of a person, and he grew to love every part. My son Jesse, who is Vic and Carolyn's godson, came with me to Vacaville that Monday, October 18th, and we went to see Vic. He was comatose at that time. Obviously, deep in his own process.
we stood there. It was a very sacred atmosphere. Jay and Carolyn were both in and out, loving, spending time, getting up, giving people privacy with him. And he would just lay there and breathing deeply. Every once in a while, something would come over his face, and I wondered, is it pain? Is it thoughts? And I started to think, it really seemed kind of like he was just processing the last of his earthly observations. Then there was a sacred moment. As I watched his face, all of that intensity lifted, and an eyelid relaxed. As it relaxed, I remember just watching, and it was as if he gave himself to the oneness. That's really the way it seemed, like laying himself open. And he stopped breathing. Carolyn was laying beside of him at that point. Jay was right there. But just like that, Vic's lesson on earth was complete. And now his presence expanded. Carolyn continued to lay beside of him, reading to him. Jay's cleansing tears were available and processing. Carolyn admitted later that she didn't even consciously realize he had died at that point. It was as if this was Vic's last physical gift to her, to go so gently, so beautifully, that there was no reason for her to panic, no reason for her to try to hang on. She just kept the loving space. Phyllis and Julie were there right about that time, and they said, "You did it, Vic. You did it." Then Renee and Lauren were there, and I still appreciate the beauty of their being around his body, giving the incense, the oils, massaging, positioning, just, it was really beautiful. And whenever I would look at Jesse, his eyes would hold the memories of our years with this wonderful man. Carolyn, Vic's partner in love and laughter. You, at that time and now, you continue to put into practice all you have learned from each other and supported each other in. Acceptance, gratitude. This next, I sat and I asked Vic, I'm such a serious person, and I was hoping that Vic would give me one of his jokes to tell, you know? But as I sat and I really tried to be open to receiving him, it was not a joke that was going to come for me. I feel in a way he was telling me that I am who I am and it's okay. So what I felt he wanted to convey was that his fervent hope that people not be dependent on him as someone to admire, but rather be inspired to go inside ourselves as comrades on this path. And then, as if he said, if I have given anything that has meaning to you, allow the particles of that light to enter your being and know it is within. So I thank you, brother, for your work, for being a force in humanity's evolution. I will do my best to be a comrade. And again, my sister, your bright light continues to shine. As does all of his family. You're such amazing people. You are living your understanding, and I will be forever grateful to know, love, learn from, and walk with you. Again, I take in that sacred moment of when Vic's eyelid relaxed, and now allowing now his expanded self to experience his eternal journey. Your humor and love will brighten even that brightest of places where you are now. With love, we behold you, Vic.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Sherry, who's here, and Diana, who's in Texas, and my brother Joe, and I just want to join with Barb in appreciating and saying thank you for the life of Vic Jenkins, a great man, an undisputably great man. It feels so good to be in the company of so many others with such wonderful memories to share. I met Vic when I was a sophomore in college, so there have been many years that have passed, a lot of water under the bridge. I think the thing that stands out most about him was the talks we shared. I think Vic may have been the most gifted conversationalist I've ever met. It was times over a glass of wine, or maybe, well, no, usually with a glass of wine. And his passion for baseball and history and music, it was inspiring to all of us. And I mean, his taste in music, we have to admit, was encyclopedic. His taste in movies was at best uneven. I think we can agree there. But he approached it all with such childlike wonder. It kind of motivated the conversation. And there were times when I was speaking to him when it was almost as if I was drawn out into an out-of-body experience, you know, where this cluster of energy just hung over the table as he chatted about things like this. And I'm happy that a few of you are nodding, because I don't say stuff like this at all, ever. But there you are. I mean, that's Vic, and I'm so grateful to him for that. More than anything, of course, I'm grateful to Vic for the love that he had for my sister that will live in her heart forever. What a team they've been. They've matched wits, they've matched intellects, they've matched aspirations for our world. A few days after his death, Carolyn mentioned how proud she'd always been to have Vic by her side, because he was a visionary. He was always working on a new project or campaign, and always had a new bold ambition. Carolyn, I know that you know that he felt exactly the same way. The way he looked at you, It was written all over his face how proud he was of you. How could he not be? In Missouri, many years ago, some of us who are here today gathered in a church to watch Carolyn and Vic get married. And what I remember most was something Carolyn said about how in love paths diverge and converge again, each time coming together with new information for the heart. And I know even now in this circumstance that will happen. I don't pretend to know how, but I know it will. And I thank Vic so much for all that he's done for our family.
Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. My first re-meeting with Vic, I don't know how we got in the conversation, but he told me that, and that was 12 years ago. He told me that if he ever had a memorial, that he wanted someone to read that. So I just did, Pops. I met Vic in high school. He was my history teacher when I was a junior. Jay was a good friend of mine, and sports guys with my brothers. I grew up with a lot of siblings. And one thing I know for sure is that all the stories that I've heard today and before, and watching his retirement videos and kids coming in saying that how great he was their favorite teacher. And we got in a conversation the other night and said, well, Vic said that Jay was his best friend, and Renee was his best friend, and Robin was his best friend, but really Carolyn was his best friend. And I started thinking, that's what his magic was. Everybody in this room, I imagine, thought that they were one of his favorite people. I really was. So through some very divine, blessed tragedies that we both had, you know, Vic's and Robin, my father had taken his own life, and my daughter was killed in a car accident. And through all these crazy things that had happened in our lives, we ended up together 12 years ago at a party for another tragedy that we were both supporting. And the next day we had lunch, and he became my faux pas. And most of you know him, that's very appropriate. But beyond that, he became my pops. And I don't say it lightly at all, because he really became my pops. And Jay and Renee and Janae and all their kids have become my family, and that's the truth. And the people at Unity became my family, and Carolyn just let me adopt them. They just let me come in and say, okay, I'm gonna be here and I'm not leaving. And all I can say is thank you. Thank you so much. And my gift from my pops is that he made me feel smart all the time, you know? He made me feel smart and beautiful and heard, and I think everybody in here feels the same way. I mean, you talk to him, you're like, oh, wow. You leave taller and smarter, and you can do anything, and he made me feel like I could do anything, and he encouraged my writing, which I was always afraid to do. And so this is for him. Death at its finest. We are going to die, you and I, and everyone that we love. The end or a beginning, our hearts shatter nonetheless, and fiery pains of sorrow leave us fragile. but death at its finest brings unstoppable reminders of the love that we carry. Powerful waves of memory wash through us for a time, and we speak the unspoken, remembering every perfect moment that we've shared. And nothing really matters but our connection to one another, to our own impermanence, to God. And the healing can begin. The broken hearts of all that we love bind together in grief and honesty and promise, holding on to one another for strength, bridging divides of yesterday in peace, allowing the pain to put us back together again. Yes, death at its finest reminds us to live life to its fullest today. Sharing the gift of love to and of each other, and refusing to wait on the tomorrows that may or may not come.
That is a tough act to follow, especially because there's these recurring themes. So you're going to hear some of the same ideas. And I didn't trust myself to wing it, so I'm going to read a little bit. I'm just Peggy, by the way. I'm not Peggy and Bonnie. Bonnie gave me the okay to, and Ginger, too, who couldn't be here. So I'm representing the nieces today. We called our Uncle Vic F-U-V, favorite Uncle Vic. This was a title that he, ever modest, gave himself. It was a standing joke amongst Vic's nieces that each of us was his favorite. And Uncle Vic started that competition himself, too, in that impish way he had. But it did feel true because, as has been said, he had that trick of making any of us feel like we were, in fact, his favorite niece. And when he swiveled that power and focus of his mind and heart on you, you felt like you were the most important person in his life at that moment. And my sister Bonnie commented that he always made her feel, as Karen has just said, like she was more than what she thought, and that she could do more and be more than what she believed she could. And that was the gift of his love. It was so powerful, and I didn't realize how powerful it was until he wasn't here to emanate that out from that physical point. I'm missing that. Uncle Vic modeled deep thinking and questioning for us. He showed us how to go through difficult times, heartbreaking times, with our eyes and hearts still open and come out stronger. My cousin Ginger commented on how Vic and her mom, Sue Jenkins Allen, who has also passed, had these qualities in common. She wrote, "They ran so deep, they laughed so hard, they mastered the art of soulfulness without ever taking themselves too seriously. They were, each of them, so unconventional. She was sassy, he was irreverent, an imp. They were magical, mystical." End quote. The four Jenkins kids, the Jenkins of his generation, Sue, Ginger, Vic, and Jerry, were pretty wonderful role models to grow up with. They were each committed to their families and to the life of the mind, heart, and soul. They all knew, or know, how to love deeply, and they all loved to laugh. Most of my memories of the Jenkins gatherings feature at least one person laughing until they were crying. Oftentimes my dad, which would just tickle me no end, with Uncle Vic always right at the center. When Uncle Vic passed, I felt the loss of a mentor and a guide. Only when he was gone did I realize how his love for me and his vision of me had thrown this wide circle of love and protection around me. Within that circle, I could see his life path gleaming and connecting with my own in multiple ways. He connected profoundly with my husband and my 2 sons in such unique and specific ways. I realized as I reflected that his life was a trail that I had been following without even realizing it until he was gone. And his love was much more a part of my guidance and protection than I realized when he was alive. I know he is not gone, but I feel the loss of his physical presence. I'll get used to this other thing that's going on. I love that too, but I do miss the hugs. And I wonder, who will remind me to just shatter the wine glass, Just shatter it and look at life differently. And I know the answer he wants me to find. It's in you, Peg. It's in you. He modeled that for us. Look within. It's all there. And if we forget, look to the people who we love to help us. And don't forget to laugh.
Before I begin my own remarks, I just want to thank you for being here. People have been calling all week and more saying, I really want to be there, but so-and-so has been sick, or I'm a little afraid, or whatever. We would not have had room for everyone. So you are the ones who were meant to be here. To those of you who are watching virtually, we understand and are very grateful that you're taking care of yourselves. And the recording will be available for all of us to watch. So that's really lovely. This is the first big event I've ever been responsible for that I couldn't rely on Vic to help me plan. And that felt overwhelming. But come to find out, I had more partners than I ever knew about. Anyone I asked for help, especially here in my church family, said, and these are the words I heard over and over again, it would be my honor. It would be my honor. And so I asked them to do everything. And they did. And it's just been the most beautiful experience. I used to think I was so self-contained, I could manage all on my own. I didn't really need anyone else's help. No more. I will never say that again. I have been humbled and exalted and so expanded in gratitude more than ever in my whole life because of the people who love Vic and me and just wanted to honor him with their words, with their music, with their love. It's been an extraordinary experience, and I know that it will not end after today. And frankly, that's what's sustaining me. That's the only reason I can be up here talking, because I've imagined this moment so many times and wondered how in the world will I do it? And then Vic would always say, the path is the path of the heart. It's the path of the heart, and so I stay in my heart, and all things really are possible. And that's one of the best things he taught me. Okay, he was an extraordinary man, and so many people have said some of the things that I would emphasize too. So I think my role is really to share some of the quiet things about Vic that you wouldn't know if you hadn't been living by his side for decades and decades. I've known him over half my life, and I didn't just love him, but I was in love with him every day. When we first moved here, I was hired by a middle school, which I never wanted to teach. Middle school students, are you kidding me? And fell in love. And some of those teachers would tell me later, we used to love to ask you, how's Vic? Because you would just light up and you would say, oh, I'm so crazy about that guy. And that lasted, all the time I was there, about 9 years, and that's the truth. Just crazy about him. I didn't know love could be like that. My fiance in college broke up with me suddenly. My first marriage didn't work out, and I was not very ready to trust even someone as gentle and good as Vic. And he used to tease me and say, yep, that safe might fall out of the window any minute. Or, yep, that other shoe is bound to drop. They just make me laugh. So when he was in the hospital, and it was so serious, we didn't know if he was going to pull out or if he would ever be the same, because he had a very serious case of what they call ICU dementia, caused by severe pain, advanced age, and urinary tract infections. And he was hallucinating. He was not himself. He was somewhere else. And sometimes it was kind of dark. So this was over a year ago, and COVID, where there were no vaccinations yet, and they wouldn't let me come in to see him. So I have such empathy for all of those people who had to say goodbye to partners without saying goodbye in person. But anyway, they called me in to see if I could help calm him down. And he said, I walked into his room and I said, my love. And he said, my love. And we just laughed. And there he was. And so they let me visit him every day, and I was there for about 6 hours every day. And one day he said, Carolyn, I just don't feel smart anymore. And he wasn't at that time. And I said, Vic, you have always been one of the smartest people I've ever known. You might even be smarter than me. And he just looked at me, his eyes narrowed a bit, and he said, well, now that you mention it, there he was. He was back. And it was such a relief. It was so joyful that we just burst out laughing. And the nurses came running in to see what was wrong. And then they wanted to know how long we'd been married. 34 years at that point. But that's the way our marriage was. It was just full of laughter and full of love. And one of the quiet things I want you to know is his love of nature, his love of the outdoors. We went backpacking and camping in our younger years. He would carry backpacks that weighed 60 pounds. And this is the only time he was ever faster than I was. I don't know what came over him, but he would just charge up hills, and he had a very meticulous way of putting up the tent. Everything had to be just so. So I was happy to let him just do that. And I would go off exploring, and I would find wonderful things, the sunshine sparkling on the water, a fern that was taller than my head, a beautiful bird singing an unusual song, and I'd go clomping back to the campsite, and I'd say, Vic, you should see. And no matter where he was in his process, no matter what he was doing, he would stop, put down the tent poles, leave that, and follow me to see what wondrous thing there was. He always made time for the extraordinary, and he saw the extraordinary in the ordinary. Every full moon, he would say, look, isn't that something? He'd say, if this happened once a year, can you imagine how we'd celebrate it? In a couple of days, it'll be a full moon again. And if it's not too cloudy, you can bet I'll be watching that moon with a special reverence, and maybe some of you will too. He always took his time. He was always the last one to finish a meal. Ginger might give him some competition. But he never hurried. He never hurried. I never saw him hurry in all of our decades together. He was always very deliberate. And me, I'm not. You know, I have two speeds, fast forward and stop. Vic had one speed, and it served him well because he paid attention. And you could see that when he listened to music. I can't tell you the number of times we'd go to a movie, and he'd say, did you hear that oboe? Or he'd say, listen to that soprano sax. Or did you hear the resolution of that minor dissonance? He taught me how to listen, and it struck me, you know, as you were watching the slideshow before the service, which will be repeated again in the social hall, that's one of his favorite pieces of music, Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tillis, and it's written by Ray Vaughan Williams. It's gorgeous. And he would have been muttering, people aren't listening, you know. And it was always that way in church. It was always that way. We always wanted to say hello to each other and visit with each other. And he thought we should be listening to the music. So I have learned to pay more attention there. He wrote a book, Breaking the Wine Glass. Does anyone have a copy of that? Yeah. Oh, many of you do. It's a little book. And he said, everything I know is in this book. And that's why it's so small. And I read that book. I have read that book 4 times, and each time I've read it, it's like new. I always find something that I didn't know. There's a lot there. And the books, there's some books available in the social hall. If you want one, love donation, all proceeds to the church. He spent a lot of time working on that, especially after Robin was murdered. It was really a way for him to put his thoughts together. And I'm so proud of all the things that he knew and discovered and believed in. He had profound influence on my life. And I know that there were many people who will say, oh, I loved my husband so much. Okay, you might have loved your husband as much as I loved Vic, but nobody could love him more because it would be impossible. He said in his first article that he wrote in the newsletter in 1987, coming here, he said, coming home is returning to that within us which we have always at the core of our being recognized to be truth. A familiar unity affirmation states that the power of love attracts to us our good. Carolyn and I are convinced that the love expressing through Unity Church of the Valley has drawn us to our right home, which will continue to be a radiant, vibrant center of love, a true spiritual home to those following the path of the heart. It is with a sense of deep love and commitment that I anticipate getting to know you and love you and serve you. And 20 years later, he reflected on those words and he said, when I wrote those words, I didn't realize how much I would receive. These 20 years have been the healthiest, most prosperous, most fulfilling, and happiest years of my life. I know this is a result of my commitment to you, which opened the door to coming home, to the fulfillment of my own life promise. And that was Vic. He was always focused on manifesting his own inner truth. He didn't look outside for that truth. He looked right here to the truth in his own heart. And that's what he taught us to do too. And I want to share a quick little story. Before we were married, he said, I don't want any pets. I was gaga over Vic, okay. Before we were even married, we went to dinner with friends, and the guy said, my daughter rescued a litter of kittens that she's been feeding around the clock. And she's found homes for all of them, but this one's going to have to go to the pound tomorrow. Oh, probably not true, but he, I've heard that ploy so many times. He put the kitten in Vic's arms, and Vic melted. And that cat, a little gray and white cat, we called Feets, and we brought her from Missouri to Vacaville, and she would sit on Vic's shoulder as he wrote his Sunday talks. 19 years later, she was dying quietly, gracefully of old age. And Vic held her in his arms the entire day. He just held her close to his heart while she took her last breath. And then we had 2 more cats and 2 dogs, and he got over it. So as I look around at you today, I'm so proud to know you and so pleased that you came. And I have loved hearing all of these stories. I have so many more, but it's enough. He lived love, he received love. I think today has been beautiful. And he loved his grandkids. And I am committed now to not calling them grandkids because they showed up in so many ways when Vic was leaving us. They couldn't do enough for him. And I said, I'm calling you the grand ones. And they are the grand ones. So they're going to do some music for you, and it's going to be beautiful. I haven't heard them perform since they did this for Robin's memorial in 2009, and you are in for a treat. So we'll have time to visit after the service, but just know that this place was a magical place for Vic, that he loved being the minister, and you loved him, I know. He thought sometimes that the only things you would remember about his talks were the jokes. That's not all bad. And now, thank you. Grand ones, you're on.
So when Carolyn asked if, getting a little herby. Good? Okay. So when Carolyn asked if I wanted to do anything at this service, I didn't have to think about it. It had to be music. I asked opinions, and we kept coming back to two songs. The first is a testament to Granddad's work here on earth, and a favorite of his. And the second are some parting words that embrace this weird duality of grief and comfort that is appropriate for a day like this. So this is our offering, and if you feel so moved, go ahead and join in. You'll probably know them. Just to also, this is my brother Jared, Jay's kids, and this is our mom, Jenny, and Michael, Karen's partner. So just to give you context, maybe it's been a while. Okay. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all this world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. We've got some folks joining us for this next one.
just do this for a second. Thank you. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be.
I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be.
And let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. And let it be, let it be, let it be, oh, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
That was so beautiful. Please join with me. That's better, isn't it? Please join with me in the prayer of protection. If anybody needs the words, they are in the program. Together, The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And so we will continue to gather, first in the Great Hall if you would like some refreshments, and then in about 15 minutes in the social hall. We will have an open mic for anyone else who would like to share. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence, your energy, your wonderful energy is a big gift to each and every one of us. And so it is.